Hello everybody, welcome back to another behind the scenes video here at Future Lore Studios. I'm the creator of Legion's Realms at War, Taylor, and we're going to go over a very important topic today in how card games are designed. You're going to get really into the head of the creator here, and we're going to break down user interface, or what we call UI in trading card games. Now, as you see, we have some cards here in front of us, and we're actually going to take a step outside the norm here, and we're going to look at some other trading card games first. So, right here we have a Force of Will card, and here we have a Yu-Gi-Oh card, right? Now, different sizes, right? One is the standard size, one is the Japanese size. But either way, the card functionality is pretty much the same. And if you're looking at these cards for face value, they're both aesthetically pleasing in their own way. But as you can see, share some similarities, right? You have your text or game box here. You have your artwork here. And then you have your name convention of the card up the top, right? So you're basically looking at a box look, right? And very similar here when you look at the Yu-Gi-Oh card. You also have box. And now you know that there's other card games like Magic, like Kaijudo in the past, Pokemon. They all share a very similar aesthetic and a similar user interface, and that's what most people are accustomed to when looking at trading card games, right? Some have borders, some are borderless, but then when you really look and really dive into it, there's some reasonings behind the way they chose to do this. Right? Now, I'm not inside those creators' heads, but what I can say is inside of my head, this is the user interface that we decided to go with Legion's Realms at War. Now, you notice there's a pretty stark difference, right? And right away, the things that catch your attention is we didn't really do the box mentality when we come to our user interface of our Legion's cards. Instead, we obviously have to have our game text box down here to make sure that the card is not only legible but easy to be played, and everything is in a common area for trading card game enthusiasts and players, because we have to keep some things status quo. But other than that, functionality of the card, we wanted the artwork to be full on the card, which you can see in the Force Will card does the same thing. Artwork goes fully down through. Now, Force Will's just changed their UI over the years, and Magic has too, depending on what style of art, what style of variant, and how they want to lay out their card interface. But the way we did it is that every card in Legion's Realms at War is a full art card. Not only that, is we wanted to get away from those stereotypical solid parchment looks on the bottom of cards, much like the Yu-Gi-Oh card here, right? And we really wanted to emphasize not only how great our artwork is, but how unique our card design is. So you notice some really stark differences. First off, we have our naming convention up the side of the card. Now, I know this has been a point of discussion in not only our Discord server, but in private messages over the course of the past year and a half that Legions has been running for. And the decision to make the card name up the side, in my thought process, is that when you have cards in your hand, right, the last thing that you want to do is be doing this, right? And trying to see what all the cards do in your hand, because you got to read the card type or the card title across the top of what the card name is. And because naming conventions are so important in Legion's Realms at War, we found that when you fan the cards out this way, and the names are up the side, like a typical hand holding cards, this is where you really get a chance to see the reasoning behind the way we did this. So you're not having to go through your cards or everyone flips through them like this, right? But this way, when you actually fan them out, you get a chance to see the naming convention up the side, and it makes it a lot easier to go through and navigate through your hand. Also, when you're searching your deck for card mechanics. Another main point we wanted to highlight and look at was our Legion's crest here. Now, when you go back to looking at a Yu-Gi-Oh card, you have a little bit of the crest or the symbol up here in the top corner. When you look at that Force of Will card, you got your casting cost and symbol up here in the top corner, right? Now with Legions, we don't have casting cost mechanics necessarily. We don't have a mana, we don't have a land-based resource system. So in Legions, you would wonder, why would we have this crest here? So this crest actually serves two purposes in the design process. Number one is that you can notice that it's a gold crest behind the actual Legion symbol here, and that gold crest denotes first edition. So in Empires in the Rise, it's currently on Kickstarter right now, there are second edition cards being printed in that, and in that situation, we are going to have silver crest behind here instead of the gold. But not only does this crest denote first and second edition in a large fashion, instead of it being down in a small corner like Yu-Gi-Oh does down here in the corner, we wanted to make sure that it was readily visible right away, almost like one of those flex moments when you're playing cards against your opponent. Yes, I'm in fact playing a first edition card. I was there in the beginning. I was there early. But not just that, is the fact that this Legion symbol crest also matters for the game. Now, you'd be wondering, okay, does a symbol have something to do? You dig through the rules, trying to figure out what the symbols represent? No, they're not anything like that. The symbols actually represent the Legion or the faction they're a part of. So you notice here, we have the fist for Titan. We have the angel wings with the sword for angels, right? And then we have like the frost anvil for dwarves. And so the reason for these crests being there is actually not only to denote and match with the color scheme of the card and the color of the Legion that you're playing, but we've had situations where we've come across players in communities, both in Canada and the United States, that we found that are trying to play the game and are colorblind. And so we found that having a Legion's crest here helps if you can't see the specific color denoted on the card. So that way you can still build a deck, you can still play Legions and have fun, even if you can't see the necessary colors that are being played in the deck. You at least know what card it is and how it matches or how it builds into your deck. So it's another thing that we try to keep conscious when designing our user interface of our cards. Lastly, you notice the big stark difference in our cards is this big swoop that comes through the card here. Now, at first, when you might look at it, it's like, is that distracting? Does it take away from the artwork? But what we really wanted to do is, once again, we tie the card in. It brings you and follows you right along to the crest here, and then into the game text of the card. So functionally, it works with the flow of the card, but also it gives us a unique opportunity to utilize foiling textures that other card games don't really get a chance to utilize. Now, other card games do use stamped foils, but not in the way that Legions does. So as you notice here, we have our two swoops. We have our color swoop to identify which color this card is, and this is a black card, which goes with the dwarf mechanic. But also is the fact that it has this foil swoop here. And this is actually an embossed, stamped foil swoop. I'll bring it up closer to the camera there. Right, and you can see it. It's actually a gold foil stamp. And so this really helps us not only to identify our rarities, but also really helps us to make some of our high rarity cards really special. When you look at our renown rare, right, that's the silver swoop. So these are actually embossed. You can feel them, and you can't feel them through a camera, but you can actually feel them when you have these Legions cards in your hand. Not only that, is we actually stamp the stars, and they're also embossed too, right? So this is a way of just, instead of making it just a generic rainbow foil card, we add our own level of foiling process, and it's actually a 2 to 3 level foiling process to get that nice stamp on the cards as well. So it's just another way that we can not only utilize the swoop and the design nature of an aesthetically pleasing card, but also be able to use that swoop and stamp to our advantage when it comes to foiling out cards. So here you're actually going to see our highest rarity, which is actually there on the playmat. This is a Phidian. This is our Elysian rare. Now, when you really take a look at our Elysian rare, that's where we can really start toying around with these amazing foiling patterns that are actually embossed and stamped into the cards. So you can see it here. We also have it in the name, right? And then down here in the phases of the moon. So these are just some of the design aspects and the reasons why we chose to have our card layout and our overall user interface like this. Now, yes, it breaks away from your typical status quo of other trading card games of the past or present, but it's just another way that we wanted to make Legions different than other trading card games, and we really wanted to encapsulate the fact that we have a way of making some unique foiling to really make the cards pop, stand out, and look beautiful in your deck. So this is just a small little segment of the reason of card design and card layout, but I'm glad that you joined us here, and hopefully you learned something and you got a chance to see the behind the scenes of what goes into card layout and ultimately what makes a beautiful card and the finished product. So until next time, I'm Taylor from Future Lore Studios, creator of Legions Realms at War, and go ahead and make sure you back that Kickstarter because we hit fully funding in 48 hours, and we would like to have you guys on board to this new, amazingly beautiful trading card game. Until next time, guys, have a good one.